Hey y'all, welcome back to Valhalla Acres. We are outside today because my little doggy needed to come outside, but also my boys are inside making a whole bunch of noise, and I wanted to film this intro for canning jam and jellies today. I am not one that wants to really be in charge of a lot of things, but I want to help out. So our PTO for the junior high asked that the parents come up with a treat to take to the school. It's for the faculty and staff. So I'm going to make some little tiny jars of mixed berry jam today, and we're going to go over that. But I also wanted to start out by saying, teachers, staff, everybody that works in a school, thank you. I really appreciate all that you do, and it takes every single one of you to make the school great. And I'm just like going back and remembering when our kids went to spring break in 2020 and they didn't go back to school. And I know from experience, because I worked in post-secondary education for 13 years, and I know how hard it was for us to try to switch on the fly and try to get everything online. We actually extended our spring break by another week just so that the instructors were able to get everything moved over and to get training on something that was new to us at the time, Zoom. And I really appreciate teachers and the staff and everybody that does something out of school. And like, special kudos to you if you work at the junior high. I have a 7th grader, and my heart just goes out to you all. Anyway, today we're going to be making a mixed berry jam. But first, I wanted to address something. Some folks have asked me, like, hey, how come you didn't start making these videos when we were all on lockdown and when everybody was wanting to learn how to can and preserve? And I was busy, and I'm going to have a little slideshow here. It's about 3 minutes long, so if you want to skip it, you can. But I included in there a bunch of pictures from what we did during the lockdown here in Arizona. And luckily, like, Arizona wasn't like super locked down. We could still go to the forest, and which is great because the forest is my happy place. And at that time, my best friend, who is the Crafty Dragon, and I will link her in the description so you can go to her pages and check out the awesome stuff that she does. But she at that time was furloughed from her job, so she came up here, and our neighbor is her mom. So she came back up here, and she spent like the whole summer here, and we took our kids so many places because my job, we couldn't really do remote because we can't accept physical mail remotely. So, but our hours were really cut back, and there was one day during the week that I didn't work, and it was Tuesdays. And so we called these our Tuesday adventures. So a lot of pictures that you'll see in there are our Tuesday adventures, and then just other things that we've done with our kids and other things that were going on around our place, our farm. And you'll meet our little Dottie. She is a bottle baby. And we still have Dottie because she thinks that she's more like a dog or a human than she is a goat. But anyway, sorry. Enjoy this video and hang in there because this is going to be a fun video. This whole video is going to be fun. All right, welcome back. I really hope that you enjoyed that slideshow of pictures. It brought back a whole lot of memories and reignited my wanderlust, and I cannot wait to get back out with my family and my best friend and her girls and explore more of our area. All right, without any further ado, let's talk about pectin and sugar. How many times have you looked at a recipe for a jam or a jelly and were appalled at the amount of sugar that was called for? In a lot of recipes, you will see that volume-wise, it calls for more sugar than it does for the fruit product. That can be really frustrating, especially if you want to cut back on sugars, or you have somebody that is diabetic and can't have as much sugar. So I will get to how you can safely do that in just a second. But first, let's talk about how sugar and pectin are best friends. Pectin is what sets your jam or your jelly, but it needs sugar. Sugar helps pull away. Sugar is hydrophilic. It loves water. So it pulls away a lot of the moisture and allows for a better set in your jam and jelly, okay? To safely be able to use something like honey, I know my honey is a little older and it's raw honey, so it does crystallize and is perfectly fine. Honey lasts forever. So if you want to use an alternative sugar like honey, or lower the amount of sugar, or go completely no sugar and just let the fruit sing on its own, which is fine, you're going to want to use a low or no sugar pectin. My favorite to use is Pomona's pectin. This stuff will like gel water. It's insane. You can safely do that, and that's what I use to do my prickly pear. That's why it's so dark, because I don't have to cook it for super long, just enough. Okay, so you can easily swap out an alternative sugar. So with honey, you're going to use like half the amount. So if you need a cup of sugar, like for sweetness wise, you'll use half a cup of honey to get the same amount of sweetness. Does that make sense? Okay. So, but if you use honey or like agave or anything like that, you're going to want to use a low no sugar pectin, okay? It's just, this stuff is wonderful and it works great as long as you follow the recipe and you use the right amount of regular sugar for that. Gel also makes a low sugar pectin, which is fantastic as well. Another one that I don't have pictured is a liquid pectin, and that's what I use to make the jalapeno jelly. That requires full sugar to be able to set. So it is important also to remember when you are making jam and jelly to work in batches. Follow the recipe to a T, because sugar and pectin, like I said, are best friends, but they really need the ideal situation to be able to set properly. So make sure you follow it to a T. When it tells you to add it, how it tells you to add the pectin. Do you go ahead and add the pectin first with the fruit and then you add your sugar later, or are we doing something a little different? Make sure that you follow the recipe and that you don't double or triple batches. I know that it can be really tempting to do that because you want to hurry up and get through. The only pectin that you can double a recipe and know for sure it's going to set is Pomona's pectin. But I wouldn't even try to go beyond a double. Now, to troubleshoot, say you did follow your recipe to a T, but it still didn't set. What can you do? Well, you can go back and recook it, let it cook down a bit, and reprocess it. Make sure that you use new lids. If you've already canned it and you look at it and you're like, oh no, it hasn't set, you can definitely do that. Okay? Or if that's not working, you can add another box of pectin to it and let it cook and let it set up. Okay? And we'll go over how to tell if it's going to set. And a lot of times you can be doing something and you'll do the spoon test and it'll be setting up and you're like, yep, that's perfect. And then you're like, oh, I guess it wasn't perfect. There are a couple things that are notoriously difficult to set. Prickly pear, for whatever reason, is one of them, because prickly pear juice on its own can become like its own substance. But once you start adding the sugar and stuff to it, it's like, nah, I can't do that anymore. And so that's why I use the Pomonas for that. Strawberry jam is another one that can take a couple days to set up. So don't get frustrated if it hasn't set up within the first day or two. A lot of berries contain their own pectin, and so you'll see recipes for like a berry jam that's like, oh yeah, just cook them down until you get to like the candy point on the recipe. So it's all up to you. Okay? All right. So I'm going to go ahead and get everything out that we need for making our jam. Okay, we are getting ready to make our jam. So we've got farmhand Trajan here. He's washing our jars for us. And he's also going to wash our rings. So remember, we just need to wash our jars and rings, and then we're going to fill them up with hot water. Yep. You can also keep your jars in like simmering water, because this is going to be a hot pack, because we're going to make hot jam. So we're going to wash them all first. We're going to put them on the dish draining mat. We also have over here our berries. I'll talk about those in a second. I have my Pomona's pectin here. I've already made my calcium water that we're going to need. And we have sugar, and then we have another bowl. So what I'm going to do, you'll see that it calls for mixing the pectin, the powdered pectin with the sugar. That's what I'm going to use this bowl for. So it's all mixed and I can dump it in there. And the next thing that we need is a nice heavy duty pan. I call it my jam pot. It was my husband's. It's mine now. I mean, he had it before we got married, but now it's mine. Okay, so get ready to pause, because I'm going to have the recipe up here, and I will also put the link to it in the description. But first, before that, I wanted to talk about using berries. So what we are going to make is called a Berry Blitz Jam by Pomona's Pectin. And we're going to use this triple berry blend. It has blueberries, strawberries, and raspberries. So really, you can use any kind of ratio of berry. Like if you're like, well, I want more raspberries or whatever. I know there's going to be more strawberries in here just because of what they're cheaper. So we're going to use this to make it, and I want you all to know that it is perfectly safe and perfectly fine to use frozen fruit. So if you're growing raspberries in your yard, in your garden, and you want to save them up, but you know, you don't live in a magical land where everything ripens all at one time, pick them, freeze them, save them up to make your jam. Okay, so I like how this says it's great for smoothies and snacks and jam. Okay, so we are going to use this. The next thing I'm going to show you is the title of it, and then just after that is going to be the recipe. And again, I will put a link in the description for this specific recipe, okay? Okay, remember how I said Pomona's, you can double the recipe? So I'm going to double the recipe that you just saw on the previous slide there. And so I have 10 cups of my fruit in here. I have it on low so that it'll start to defrost, because I didn't pull it out in time to let it thaw. You can run this through a food processor or blender to break up the strawberries. So I'm going to let this cook a little bit, and then I'm going to use an immersion blender on it. In the meantime, so the recipe tells us to put our fruit in there. Per recipe, it's 5 teaspoons of the calcium water. So I have 10 teaspoons there. And it was 5 tablespoons of lemon juice. So I have 10 tablespoons of lemon juice. Now, if it tells you to use bottled lemon juice, you need to use bottled lemon juice. Bottled lemon juice all has relatively the same acidity, because kind of like how like tomatoes kind of ride the line and they can vary in acidity. Sometimes they're sweeter and less acidic and so forth. Real lemons are the same way. So if you come across a recipe that says use bottled lemon juice, use bottled lemon juice. You're using that for the acid to make the recipe safe. Now, fruit's typically high in acid. This also helps it be more acidic, and just to make sure that it is shelf stable. Okay, in my bowl, I have measured out 5 cups of sugar for the 2 recipes. So that's 5 cups of sugar combined. And then I also have 5 teaspoons of the Pomona's Pectin. And you want to make sure that you get it mixed in. really, really well. So what you could do, if you don't mix it well, or if you just pour your pectin straight over into your fruit, is you'll end up with clumps in it. And it's okay if that happens. You can use like an immersion blender or put it in a blender and break it up, but you'll have to bring it back to a boil if you do that, because you don't want to put super, super, super hot stuff in a blender, but it'll help break it up. But the best way to avoid that is to follow the recipe and add the pectin when it tells you to add it. So we're letting our fruit cook down a little bit, and then I'm going to hit it with the immersion blender to break up the strawberries, and hopefully that'll help. The strawberries like the foam. Keep the foam down. You can add like a teeny tiny bit of butter, like, I mean tiny, because the fat in there will help with the bubbles, keep it from foaming too much, and strawberry foams a lot. But I don't know if there are teachers at the school who are vegan or have a dairy allergy, so I'm not going to chance it. That's the nice thing about the Pomona's pectin, is it's like made from citrus, like, so it's vegan, it's all that, and it's non-GMO. So I just want to make sure that I don't cause anybody to be like, oh, I can have that, and then they have an allergic reaction to it. If they know that it has strawberries, raspberries, and blueberries, they automatically know if they're going to be allergic to those things. But if I don't tell them, like, yeah, I used a tiny bit of butter, I don't know. I don't want to hurt anybody. So that's why I'm going to try to do it this way and hopefully not get a bunch of foam. If I do get foam, just turn it off and you scrape the foam off, and kids enjoy eating the foam on toast. Okay, so I used the immersion blender and I broke it up. I mostly kind of went over each strawberry and pushed them down and then hit it. Just so, because those were the ones that I was really concerned about, were the strawberries. And I just wanted to point out a little tip. So this is already getting warm. Like, sugar burns are no joke. I remember my mom used to make these beautiful pies, and she had a huckleberry pie in the oven, and it was a wood cook stove, and she and my stepdad had gone into town, and she goes, hey, in X amount of time, take the pie out of the oven and put it on the table so it can cool. And I was like, okay, cool. And I took it out, and I was probably like 14, 15 at the time, and I think I was 15. And I took it out, and I was holding it with a hot pad, and I was like, oh no, I need to put a hot pad underneath of it. And in my head, I tipped it up, and I poured hot boiling pie filling all down my arm, and it blistered. It was really bad. So sugar burns like crazy. So if you're going to use an immersion blender and it's already getting hot, like, put it all the way down before you turn it on and hit it, because it's going to get loud. It throws things everywhere. Okay, so be safe. Now that the fruit is all broken down, we're going to follow the recipe like it says, to stir constantly, bring it to a boil over medium heat. This could take a little while to get to. And you want to stir constantly because you don't want it to stick to the bottom of the pan and burn. Once we do that and it gets to a boil, we're going to add our sugar and pectin mix, bring it back to a boil, and let it boil hard for 1 minute. We're going to stir it, make sure it doesn't burn, and then it should be set. So when I get to that point, I will show you how to check and see if it's going to set, okay? Okay, we're at a nice boil here. I'm going to show you how to add your sugar and pectin mix. Stir, 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 stir. Stir it in, stir it in, stir it in, stir it in, stir it in. And keep stirring.
Yes.
And then we're going to bring it. Look at how pretty that is, though.
Yeah.
Adding sugar to it makes it look delicious, and it makes you see how many fruit I missed with the immersion blender. That's okay, because it's a jam. And jam has chunks of fruit in it. Okay. Now we're going to let it do its thing. Okay. So we're to this point where everything has cooked, and now I'm going to show you how to check for gel. Take a regular spoon, just kind of dip it in here, and get some on there. And then what I do is I blow on it, or you can put it in the fridge, in the freezer. It kind of cools off faster if I blow on it. And then I'm going to check how it comes off. Look at that. Oh, and I missed the cup. It landed on the counter. Anyway, it came off great. I know this is going to gel, and this gives me a chance to also give this a taste. and it tastes great. It tastes like berries and not overpowering amount of sugar. At this point, I'm going to turn this off. We're going to let this simmer down because you can see it's still very, very active in here. And we have all this foam. So if I let this sit for just a few minutes till everything calms down, then I can scrape the foam off. The foam is fine to eat, like on toast or something. Put it in a bowl and just enjoy it because it's really good. You don't necessarily want to put it in your jar because it has air bubbles in it. And so that can really affect your headspace. And it doesn't look very pretty. So let's let this calm down for a minute. And then we'll fill jars. So we had the jars all sitting in hot water in the sink. We filled them to 1/4 inch of headspace. And now we have this much left in here. And you're going to want to use like a little plastic spatula for the bottom. See on the edge here how there's still a lot, but it's really, really thick and really, really set up. So we're going to want to refrain from scraping that off and putting it in a jar. Still scrape it off, put it on your plate or your bowl that you put your foam that you scraped off, and enjoy it. Hey Jaden, what's next? We filled all our jars. What do we do now?
So we're going to put all the lids on.
Yeah, but what do we do before we put the lids on?
Make sure clean around these.
We're going to wipe off the lip of the jar because you can see how on some of these we've got some jam and jelly up there. So we're going to wipe it off with a wet paper towel. You can put vinegar on it to help break up everything. We're going to wipe it off. We're going to put our lids on and then our rings just finger tight. Okay, so I have my jars in here, and because I need to make another batch of jam, I have it in the can already with water that's similar in temperature to the jars. I have it on, but I have it on low, low, low so that they stay warm while I make my next batch. I need to wash everything because I don't want, you know, it's already sticky in the pot here and it's really stuck on. I can't even scrape it off my fingernail. So I need to wash this all so that it's not in the next batch. And then we are going to bring this up to a boil. Now we haven't water bathed yet in any of the videos to this date. We've just been pressure canning. Any pot that you can safely cover your jars with 2 inches of water and it has a lid and you have a rack to put on the bottom. See it down there on the bottom? Can be a water bath canner. We're using my Presto 23-quart pressure canner. And we're going to put the lid on it, but we're not going to put the weight on it. So we're going to just set it on there, kind of not really lock it down, just kind of set it askew. Because a pot with a lid boils faster than a pot without one. And then we are going to process them. So the recipe says 10 minutes. I live at almost 6,000 feet. I'm going to err on the side of caution. I'm going to process them for 15 minutes. No, I add 15 minutes. I'm sorry. I'm going to process them for 25 minutes. And once it gets to that nice rolling boil, you don't want a crazy boil going on where it's just like throwing water out of the canner and making a huge mess, because that can lead your little jars to clank together and break them. And just a nice boil. A rolling boil is when you can't stir down, but it's not one that you need to like battle, okay? Now you'll notice I need a rack in between my jars here, but I can't find it. If you can offset, see how this is a jar here and there's a jar here. This one's sitting on top. You can, if you offset them and they will stay there for the whole duration, you can do that. You just don't want them sitting directly on top of each other. Okay, I have my canner finally loaded. And like I said, I'm using my pressure canner, but I'm not going to use it as a pressure canner. I had the lid on here. You can see it's askew. It's not locked down. I'm going to wait for this to come to a boil. I'm going to set my timer for 25 minutes because of my altitude. When I turn it off, it's kind of the same process as when you're water bath or pressure canning. You're going to turn it off, let it settle down for about 10 minutes, take the lid off, let it sit for 5 to 10 more minutes until you can safely pull your jars out. You're going to use the jar tongs and pull them straight up and straight over and straight down onto, I actually found my dish drying mat and now it's covered in jam. But we're going to let them sit there for 12 hours. And then we'll wash them up if we need to. I did actually remember to put vinegar in my water Yay, there's my vinegar. So hopefully they won't look too bad, but I'm gonna wash them up anyway. And when they're cool, label them and get them over to the junior high. I really appreciate you all sticking around for this video. I know it was a little longer. I also included down here in the description with Pomona's, and this is not like, I'm not sponsored or anything by Pomona's, but I do love it. And Pomona's Pectin gives you a little bit more freedom with your making your recipe. So I included in here, it's like a create your own jam recipe, and it tells you on the link, if you click on it, it tells you what fruit and then how much Pomona's Pectin to use per amount of that fruit. It's really great. So you can check that out. It's in the link. Again, I really appreciate you all hanging in here and watching this video. Please comment or send me any messages. My email address is down there too. If you have any questions or if you have any suggestions on what to do next. I'm getting my gears turning in my head thinking about what to do next for y'all. Anyway, Trajan would say, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you really liked it, give it 10 thumbs up. And we will see you all next time. Have a good one.